It's what determines everything. It's our ancestral law, and when I began to learn about it, I was in my mid-30s, and the first time I experienced it was in a feast in Speyer, and I was absolutely blown away by the order and the grace and the beauty of the Ayao in action. My understanding is that it comes from the ancestors. It's our teachings, it's our principles, it's our values, all brought together. It's what helps us resolve conflicts. It's what helps us to learn mostly what respect is for myself and for others. So when I'm struggling with myself, generally what I do is I write things out. It helps because otherwise I'm on a hamster wheel in my head. I grew up, my mother was Grace Freeman, and she was a missionary. She went to Prairie Bible Institute, and she found her way to Gitxaala, where she met my father. She was teaching school there, the day school, federal day school, and as well Sunday school. And so having a missionary mother, church was a really big part of my childhood. And then as well, I would say to her later as an adult that she was conditioned into paranoia. So I found there was a lot of judgment. And then obviously by how I look, being Indigenous as well in that environment in Oak Bay, which is like the British section of Victoria, it was challenging. What I've come to see, and it's taken a while for me to see this, is that when the horrendous, let's say, atrocities were happening in my relationship with my father, I was quite young when it started, and when it finished, it was about 5 years, and when it finished, I was 8. At least direct sexual abuse. As I look back, and mainly through neurofeedback therapy, I was amazed at, because everything slows down, and I had memory that once in a state of collapse, I was looking at the grain of wood. It's Douglas fir, and the wood had iridescence in it, and I was noticing that. And that, I just thought, wow, that's how children are. Children naturally will either, I went to the beaver pond, I rode my bike barefoot. When I was in the city, I climbed the willow tree and the crabapple tree. We do these things as children. But for most of my life, I didn't see that was also at a time when atrocities were happening. Because it was not only me that my father had abused, it was also my best friends when I was a kid and my daughters. So my children, I would say, were my main teachers around forgiveness. And to understand that there was something that happened to my father, not to excuse him or take away his responsibility, but just simply to understand so that I could come out of this constricted state to when I have understanding, I'm more relaxed. And so I think intergenerational trauma and understanding how that works, the inquiry is really important, with a desire to understand. Forgiveness comes later, As I was working on my healing, I grew up with incest, and that distorted pretty well most of my reality as a human being. And one of the ways in which I was invited actually by my oldest brother, Roy, to work on my healing was through a traditional fast. And I was in a fast, and nighttime throughout my life has always been difficult, especially if I'm alone. And I was alone this one night in the fasting lodge, and I woke up, and there was this pressure, get up and get on your knees. And so I did. And then the next thing was now sing. And I was like, sing? Like making a noise when it's dark out? But I did anyways. I sang some of the Sweat Lodge songs, and something really powerful happened in me. It was that, there wasn't deception or betrayal that followed making a noise and being heard. Instead, it was just a real incredible clearing. And I just sat there for a bit, and I was amazed. And a friend that I'd met in somatic experience, Leslie Eliel, she was an editor, I didn't know this, and her act of reconciliation for growing up in Montana at Big Hole was to offer to do a pro bono with me. And I didn't have all that information initially. She just contacted me and she asked, do you have anything that you want to publish? Because she knew I'd completed my doctoral dissertation on transformation. And I said, actually, I do have some writings, and I sent them to her, and she said, could you send me more? That I was curious about transformation and how does it actually happen, because I see it as healing. The healing just continues, it continues. And I'm really grateful. There was a time when I wondered what would life have been for me without those horrendous experiences in childhood. And for the longest time I asked that. I don't ask that anymore. Now I'm grateful for everything I've experienced in life. For one thing, it helps me to be present and to pay attention to perhaps what other people wouldn't pay attention to, because we had to read body language. Those of us who have experienced childhood violence in any way, you have to see it before it's coming, so that you can brace yourself or hide, or run or do something to try to survive it. So I think, we develop skills that where there's the opportunity for them to be a part of compassionate relationships. Healing, that body healing, also trauma's locked into the body. So with that healing, the deeper healing, I'm just noticing a greater freedom.